Hi guys! In this week's episode, we'll be talking with Mix Lex Horwitz. Now they go by the pronouns they and them, and they identify as non-binary, transmasculine person. Now when I said that, some of you might have totally gotten it, while others might be still wondering about, things related to sexuality or gender identity, and that is totally okay. This is exactly why I wanted to have this episode with Lex. Such issues are usually considered taboo in multiple cultures in society and are often brushed under the rug, while Lex is doing something that is exactly antipodal. They are learning about such issues, about psychology and other related things, and spreading awareness about mental health and LGBTQI awareness around themselves. While talking to Lex, I could clearly sense so much vulnerability and wisdom at the same time that lay in their heart. Rightfully so, because they had gone through so much immense amount of a life journey that usually people don't go through, especially at an early age, because most of us don't have to discover ourselves, beyond what we have learned or been taught by our parents or society. Lex has their own, merch line that directly, some parts of the profits goes to the needy within the LGBTQI spectrum. They also are a mental health advocate. They are also, an ally to many causes that are often brushed underneath the rugs. And they also model owning her sexuality and gender identity like nobody business, which rightfully needs to be like that. And that in itself is so inspiring, and I can't wait for you guys to just see this episode and try and maybe discover something about Lex that I didn't know or she didn't know, or maybe about yourself. So if you're ready about this, then keep on watching and I hope you love it. Bye. Good evening, everybody. In today's episode, I have Mix Lex Horwitz. Now this badass person goes by the pronouns they, them. Now, they is a queer, non-binary, transmasculine, LGBTQ advocate, mental health activist, and a model. Can you believe it? Put that in a bucket. Like, they're killing it already. Now, Lex has a BA in psychology and gender sexuality and women's studies, and they're also currently pursuing masters from the University of Pennsylvania. Now, Lex, you're killing it with your even business opportunities. You have a killer merch line. I mean, I could not help myself but actually literally stalk your merch line. It is so cool. And what's the good part about it is the 15% profits are going to greater causes, which we will delve into the later part of this interview. But thank you, first and foremost, for letting me host this interview with you. And thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Alrighty, Lex. So let's go in this chronological order and start with, tell me something about yourself.
Sounds good. So my name is Mix Lex Horwitz. I use they, them pronouns, and identify as a queer, non-binary, transmasculine Jewish human. And my work, my profession, the passions that keep me going and just pump blood through my veins are that I am an LGBTQ plus educator, activist, and model. And all of my activism, my education, my modeling is through this idea that visibility and representation and redefining restrictive traditional norms provides an avenue for the uplifting and support and celebration of the beauty of marginalized people, specifically looking at transgender people's lives.
That is actually so much more powerful. I mean, especially in these days where your sexuality is somehow everyone's business, which it shouldn't be. But unfortunately, we're living in days and times where everyone wants to know who you are, who do you identify with. So we need some outspoken, flag bearers like you who can basically pave the path for upcoming youth. Like there are so many other people who maybe are not as badass and forthcoming as you are, but what you're doing right now is basically enabling hundreds and hundreds of and thousands of youth and peers around the society to normalize our identification and ensuring that we are just more than what we are and how we identify ourselves. Talking about more than what we are and our identification, let's just go back down the memory lane and start with little Lex. How was it growing up? Tell me about your siblings. Tell me about your mom and dad. Where did you grow up and all the good stuff?
Yeah, of course. So a little side note is that I actually came out as non-binary transmasculine about 2.5, 3 years ago. So for the majority of my life, I was not able to live as my authentic self, which is who I currently am. So when I think back to my childhood, little Lex was knew exactly who they were. When I was about 3 years old, I remember my family. A little more background info. My family is my dad, my mom, and my sister and I. We're a very small family. My sister and I, we're 11 months apart. She's my best friend. Everyone in my family, we are so incredibly close, and I call them. They are all like just. If I did not have them, I would not be here today. Is just the plain truth. And so for me, I had a very fortunate upbringing. Both of my parents are physicians. So I had access to, I went to a private school for 14 years. I actually went to an all-girls school, which definitely shaped my upbringing. And so my family and I'm in my childhood home right now in quarantine with my mom and my sister. And growing up in our childhood home, I remember when I was 3 years old, my dad had changed my sister and I to go out and play. And my dad had put shorts on me, and I had run out the front door to go play. And he said, "Hey, Lex, you're not done getting changed. You don't have a shirt on yet." And I said, "Boys don't wear shirts." And so I was 3 years old, already not identifying as a girl. But because there was such limited, if any, information about transgender people, about how being trans is not a disorder, it's not perverted, it's not any of these negative things, how being queer isn't a death sentence because the media painted it to be that way for such a long time. And so when I told my dad, boys don't wear shirts, and I was identifying not as a girl, he didn't have the language to understand what I was telling him. And then fast forward to first grade, my all-girls school. I was there from pre-K through senior year. In first grade, I went to my best friend and I said, "Carolyn, my name is Lex and I'm a boy." And she was like, "Okay." And so my classmate called me Lex and knew that I was a boy, and I was affirmed as the person who I was until my teacher in front of the entire class said, "No, your name is dead name and you're a girl." And so it was really challenging growing up because I already knew who I was. Like, I knew I wasn't a girl. I didn't know what the possibilities were, that trans people existed, that queer people existed and were valid and beautiful, and finding the most authentic versions of themselves, because the environment that I was in, the school environment I was in, was extremely gendered, right? As an all-girls school. My parents, who were extremely supportive and wanted what was best for me, didn't have the narrative or the knowledge to be able to understand what I was telling them when I said I was allergic to the color pink, or I would pretend to vomit when I was given nail polish, or when in pre-K, I, at a play date, chopped off all of my hair. My hair was to my waist, and I chopped that sucker all the way up. And so I, as a very young human, was trying to find the ways to tell my family, tell my friends, tell the world, "Hey, you're telling me that I'm a girl, and I'm not." But it took until getting to college and taking academic classes in queer theory, in gender sexuality, and women's studies for me to have the language to understand that being trans or being queer isn't a bad thing. It isn't a death sentence. It isn't something that should be feared. It's something that is beautiful and affirming and authentic, and provides an even more expansive and deeper way of living once you understand those parts of yourself.
That is actually so, I mean, it's so relatable. And now that I think about it, there's so many little girls and little boys who kind of sort of get this, at least back in our day when we were growing up, it wasn't as normalized, or we weren't as educated about what we are dealing with, or is it normal, or is it just us, or is it a phase, or is this imagination? But I'm so happy, and we can dwell about your programs later, but now, because of this education that we're being taught about little girls and boys, and they're 14 and 15, and they exactly know who they are and what they want and how they want to represent themselves. But if it wasn't for, activists like you and the hardships that you had to go through to basically snatch what you rightfully deserved, maybe the current youth today wouldn't get it so easy as much as they are. So thanks from my end and so many others for normalizing it and for making sure, as you said, that it's nothing that is perverted or a taboo or something to be afraid of or a mental disorder. In fact, it's beautiful that how you are born into something and you have the right and true freedom. We talk about freedom in this country, but are we really free when we can't even choose how to represent ourselves? And instead we decide to get succumbed into these societal norms and boxes that are so rigid and unforgiving. But we somehow feel that it's okay to get ourselves, inside those boxes, because what if we come out? And what if we are going to be questioned by those few illiterate men and women, about our choices? So I am so happy and inspired by the story. Let's move ahead.
And everything that you just said is exactly why I do everything that I do, because my goal is that I am being the person currently that I needed to see growing up. Because had I seen someone like me, or had I heard a story of someone like mine, or seen that your body can be whatever you want it to be, and that doesn't dictate your gender or your gender expression or your ability to love yourself or other people. And so just simply by being unapologetic and my full authentic self, it's trying to say like, hey, these restrictions, these binaries, these stereotypes that you're saying are these ideals and they're great are really crappy. They're really harmful and they suck. And we need to change them. We need to redefine them. And if we're not going to redefine them, we need to dismantle them and build something that is greater than what we currently have.
That is current. That is 2020. And that is, speaks for 2015 and 2010. And, that's not outdated, back in 50s. I won't even say outdated, ancient. And basically lacing these ancient taboos in this basket of religion and the holy yeses and the holy no's, and if you do anything otherwise you'll get stuck by a lightning, and all these dated bloody notions that are just taking our society regressively 15 years back, then actually progressing it into even the current times. So that's great. So you spoke about your middle school, Lex. A little birdie also told me that you were and also are an athlete. So how was it growing up as an athlete in middle school and high school, and what are all the hurdles that you possibly faced while pursuing a simple task, what most of cis men and cis women are allowed to pursue, without any hiccups?
Yeah, absolutely. Athletics. So another big part of my identity. So like a lot of times when someone asks, hey, like we are such complex, intricate beings. Like we have so many different identities that we claim. What identities do you claim? Being athletic, like being an athlete, is a really big part of my identity. And so growing up, my dad was he played tennis his entire life, played tennis in college. He still plays tennis now. And so from the moment that we could crawl, we were pretty much enrolled in different athletics. My sister and I, when we were in elementary school, we were lucky enough that our parents signed us up for a bunch of different activities. We did gymnastics, taekwondo, figure skating, hip hop kids, which was this little like hip hop dance group. Thank you, Mom, because I can dance now because of that. Like, honestly, that is just like such.
It pays off.
That is my favorite like childhood memory, is wearing the little Sophie shorts that say hip hop kids with a Z on it. It's like the best thing ever. And so we had the opportunity to try all of these different realms of athleticism and see what we liked the most, what was the most exciting for us. And so we started playing tennis extremely competitively because my dad was a competitive tennis player, and that was in elementary school. We started real young. And when we got to middle school, it was time, the way that our school works, and maybe this is how public school works as well, I'm not 100% sure, but our athletic team started having varsity and JV and then club teams in middle school. And then the same was in high school. And so you could either do one sport each semester, or you could do no sports at all. And so something that we did was that we I'm trying to think of what I did exactly. I did field hockey, softball, and squash for all of my seasons growing up, middle school and high school. And athletics was always an outlet for me. Athletics was a space where your gender was irrelevant, your sexuality was irrelevant. What happened to you last night didn't matter, because the only thing that matters is your capability to focus in the moment and work on improving yourself. And then if it's a team sport, it's working on that self-improvement while also growing and navigating society as a team and what competition looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So athletics was always an avenue for me to fully commit myself into a different space where I could forget my worries. I could forget what had happened, good, bad, in between, and just focus on competition, focus on this is my field, like this is my court, and what do I need to do to come out on top? And I'm a very competitive person. So having athletics as a healthy distraction, as a way to train both mentally and physically, a way to compete and to channel myself, was a very, very big part of my growing up.
That is great. And do you still somehow like pursue it currently in any way or form?
I do, yeah. So I actually, so throughout middle and high school, I did squash and field hockey and softball. And then in college, I knew that I wanted to play competitively in college. And I wanted to choose one sport because I wanted to fully commit myself to one sport and be able to compete at a high level. So I chose to play squash in college. And I played for all 4 years. I was the captain of the women's team my junior and my senior year, but I did actually end up switching to the men's team my senior year, because that's when I had played on the women's team when I had come out as genderqueer. I was captain of the women's team. It was this very complicated give and take of, I love the sport, but being constantly associated with women and the women's team and all of the wrong associations with being on that team were so mentally frustrating and made me feel extremely unseen. And so I made the decision to switch to the men's team for my senior year of college. And I'm lucky that I still am able to pursue athletics, whether I reserve a court so I can go play, go on runs. I love to skateboard. So if you're in Philly, you'll probably see me skateboarding in the street somewhere.
Can you teach me? On a side note, I suck at it.
Yeah. Skateboarding is just like a free like ride. And it's just like, it's freedom. It's just the air and the street, and I
totally get it. But when I decide to get on those four wheels, like my butt and the pavement is just best friends. Like they meet every now and then whenever I try to get it on. So I can't wait to actually come out to Philly and get it all going with you.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. No, skateboarding is one of my favorite things to do. I skateboard, I skimboard, which is pretty much skateboarding, but on the thin part of the water on the beach.
Right.
I've snowboarded once, but I loved it. I've tried surfing and I love it. Pretty much any board sport, I'm just like, sign me up, coach. I want to do it.
Me on the meanwhile sitting on my butt on this sofa, not doing anything. I just feel so bad. Okay, stop making me feel good. Just kidding. Okay, so not only you were an athlete, but you were also a little, soft heart, because you also would, shelter little animals and help them rescue and, sort of save them. And that also cue in your little kitty that you currently have. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, so growing up, pretty much the moment I popped out of the womb, I was determined to save animals. I grew up with a kitty in our household, and I just felt such a connection to these other living creatures. And even though we didn't speak the same language, right, there wasn't traditional ways of communicating, right, from like humans to cats, but I just always felt so much love and appreciation for non-human animals. And so growing up, I would hold little fundraisers, I would host seminars about humane education, and I would go to the local shelters in our area. And I remember the fundraisers that I held, I purchased, what were they? Like massive, like fluffy beds, so I could put them in the shelter so that the cats would have to sleep on the concrete or on like the steel cages. And
Right.
I was always just, I was like, I am determined to be able to support these beautiful creatures who do not have a voice for their own to be able to navigate for themselves. And that's something that I still currently do with, I adopt senior special needs kitties as my babies. And I currently have two little loves, Sabu and Lady, and they are my rocks. They are fantastic. And Sabu is actually my official emotional support animal through I forget the name of the federal organization that you have to do that through, but Sabu
Right.
is my emotional support animal. So I am super passionate about advocating for senior animals, advocating for special needs animals, and just showing the world that we need to treat other creatures, other living things with respect and dignity and love.
And also they teach us such an important lesson, like, you know, how they talk about dogs and cats, like you could be anything to them as long as you're loving them and you're you know, there for them. They don't care who you are, what's your ethnicity, culture, gender, sex, religion. They just, you know, live off the love. So I think people need to learn and, you know, and learn so many things from these simple creatures that are often seen as, you know, less developed, quote unquote, but they live in the present. You know, you could howl on a cat or a dog and eventually 5 minutes later they'll still come back to you with that same love because they want to be in the present. So there's a lot to love. um,
Exactly.
this basically puts me into the perspective, and correct me if it's wrong, because you were going through so many things, you know, and your heart and your understanding of animals and your whole battle with being a killer athlete. There was so much psychology involved in trying to truly understand who Lex is. Is that what was the catalyst in for you to pursue your bachelor's in psychology, gender, sexuality, and women's studies later after high school?
Yeah, so growing up, I experienced, oh wow, there's so much wind. One moment, I'm on the porch, so it's like I don't know, can you hear me? Are we still good to go?
We're still good to go. I can hear you. Perfect.
Okay, cool. But so growing up in the all girls environment that I was in, school wise, I wasn't treated well. I was mistreated because people knew that I was different. I wasn't able to put that difference into words, but people already knew that. And so I knew that I wanted to have a deeper understanding of the human mind.
Right.
And one way to do that was to pursue psychology. And so when I went into college, I knew that I wanted to pursue a liberal arts education because that was a diverse range of courses that would help to cultivate me into a global citizen that has information that can help the world. And so I went into college thinking that I was going to double major in psychology and anthropology because I fell in love with an anthropology course that I took in high school. And that first year of college, I was taking some psych classes, I was taking some anthro classes, and then I came to this miraculous discovery that I was gay. And so at the time, I thought that I was a cisgender gay woman.
Mm-hmm.
And in that identity, I was able to explore my masculinity. I was able to realize that it's not just that I'm a masculine woman. It's more than just my expression. It's that
Right.
I'm a queer person. And so
Right.
it was first I came out as gay, and then I came out as genderqueer, and now I use the terms non-binary transmasculine to define my identity. And it was through that cycle of being in a space that was both safe enough physically and emotionally to start to understand my identity and to start to understand that it is beautiful and valid to be queer. And it's not something that is something to be ashamed of. And so I randomly took it wasn't really so random. It was a gender, sexuality, and women's studies course that was the intro course. And I took it and it changed my life. It really did. I remember reading Jack Halberstam's Female Masculinity. And that was the first time that this switch just kind of flipped in my mind, and it said, just because you're female doesn't mean that you have to be a woman, or just because you're female doesn't mean you have to be feminine. And that just changed everything. I was like, I was assigned female at birth, but that doesn't have to dictate who I am right now. That doesn't mean that I have to be a woman or that I have to be feminine. And that was when I realized I needed to start pursuing gender, sexuality, and women's studies as my other major instead of anthropology, because looking historically at the, like, how we have chosen to define gender and sexuality and sex itself, or the different legal categories, whatever they may be, is information that we take for granted. It's things that once you look at it through an academic lens, you realize that everything that we know is socially constructed. The things that are traditional or ideals, things that we say are inherent and natural and have to stay in place, are pretty recent given human history, and we can absolutely take them down and rebuild them. And so that's how I decided to pair psychology with gender, sexuality, and women's studies. And I was fortunate enough in my junior and senior year to focus my studies on looking at marginalized communities and different, so for instance, I took class mental health and stigma that looked at stigmatized identities and marginalized identities and the different mental health consequences of having those identities. I did a lot of my own independent research looking at trans people's navigation of the world and mental health. And so I think it was the most fantastic major because I got to not only look at psychology and gender, sexuality, and women's studies, but got to combine them and look at the unique lived experience and consequence of having marginalized identities in today's world.
And that can kind of gives you this safe haven of belief that, you know what, everything as a society has been telling me since I was little that this is weird or this is abnormal or there's no word invented for it. There is an actual explanation of how I feel and what I am. And, you know, even if it wasn't, I'm not saying that you need an explanation or something written in the books to validate your own feelings and validate your existence. But if it is, it just puts things in perspective that, hello, it's science. It's not, you know, something that can be treated by pills. And you get to the position where now you are educating so many other, educating through so many other forums and so many other people who need this kind of knowledge, and potentially so many other individuals who.
Oh, are you there?
Pursue this further, or, you know, maybe sort of catapult this into a movement, like write a book or write a blog or become a public speaker at TED Talks. If not, put it into the perspective. I think you'll be great at it. Just as a side note.
Well, thank you. Unfortunately, some of what you just said kind of cut out and I missed it, but I got the last part. I heard TED Talk and public speaker, and that is definitely a road that I am trying to pursue as a form of visibility and my activism.
Perfect. Okay. Talking about TED Talks, you're also very good at modeling. So tell me, how did modeling happen? Like, you briefly touched transition happened. You came out as, a cisgendered woman, but who is gay, so lesbian, and then eventually discovered that you're non-binary. And during all of this, was modeling in the middle of this, or did it happen post your final identification? And if I may say so, I don't mean it as a period. It could be something else, and I'll be more than happy as you keep discovering yourself, and what everyone should do. But how did modeling lace into this? Because you were not only discovering yourself, you were studying and you were doing so many things that were happening. And I think there are hormones involved. So you're emotionally not at the best state, because they also affect your, cortisol level and whatnot in your body. So, and you were mentally probably not in the best, state, in the A1 state. But you also, in the midst of basically trying to imply that there was so much commotion in your life, and you decided to somehow channel it via modeling. And if yes, What were the hurdles that you faced internally in your head and externally by the society?
Yeah, of course. Well, first off, I'm just going to make a little correction of language. For whatever reason, I never felt comfortable using the term lesbian,
Right.
probably because I never actually identified as a woman. So when I first came out, I came out as like, I guess I'm a cisgender woman who's gay. And then I was like, oh, woman doesn't feel right. And then
Uh-huh.
genderqueer, and now the non-binary trans masculine. And
Right.
growing, the thing about modeling is that it it I don't even know how to describe it, but am I never saw it as an actual possibility for me, both
Right.
consciously and subconsciously.
We both can
So for
relate.
me, yeah, because like for me growing up, so my sister and I were only 11 months apart, and people always thought we were twins.
Mm-hmm.
But I never truly felt comfortable in my body. I tried to do the things that society told me I should do as a girl. I tried to listen to what my parents said girls do, or whatever it may be, right? Like listening to these societal messages.
Right.
But I always felt as if I wasn't pretty enough. I wasn't beautiful enough, especially because my sister was so beautiful and so pretty. And anytime we were out together, people would always comment on how beautiful she was, and like no one would ever say anything about me. And
Right.
so I never thought that modeling was an option. I knew that in my heart and soul, like I'm a beautiful person inside and out, like whether pre knowing that I was trans, post knowing I was trans, but having those messages of always hearing other people affirm my sister's beauty and feeling very unseen in that, to the point where now I'm actually professionally modeling, is just, I'm still shocked that I'm where I am today. And I actually started modeling a few months ago. It's very recent. I was, let me think of how this went. If you know Christiana, she is a supermodel, fantastic human being, heart and
Mm-hmm.
soul. And she was hosting she was producing and directing a photo shoot that was celebrating trans masculinity. And I saw that she was doing that. I reached out, and she said, we would love to have you. So I went to New York, and that was the first professional photo shoot I had ever done. And it was released by Refinery 29. And
Wow.
after that, I was like, this is where I need to be. In that space, I had never felt just so light, and that every one of my emotions was like meant to be.
Right.
Everything had a purpose. And the energy that I felt, the confidence, the euphoria, the community that I felt at the shoot, what I loved about modeling was that you have this experience with the photographer and the assistants and the director and the producer, but then you also have still photographs that capture those very, very special, specific moments.
Right.
And it was in that shoot that I was like, this feels really natural. And
Right.
Christiana and the photographer said, hey, I think you should look into doing this. Like, this looks like something that you could really do.
Mm-hmm.
And since that shoot, I did a portfolio shoot with a photographer that did that shoot. And I started reaching out to different queer brands and organizations and seeing if there was any way for me to be involved. And I ended up where I am today, where I walked in New York Fashion Week for the Society show. I walked in the MTV Music and Fashion Conference show. I was supposed to walk in LA Fashion Week for both of those shows as well as Miami Swim Week and the Model Hunt competition in LA. However, with COVID, the timeline for all of those things are being postponed. It's a little unclear. But
Right.
my first shoot was in November of 2019. And it was fate. It was meant to be that I connected with Christiana and was immersed in such a beautiful and affirming environment, and saw this is something I need to pursue. This visibility, this affirmation, this feeling of euphoria is something that I want to continually have.
Wow, that is actually really interesting. So it's a recent newfound greatness that you feel that it's something that's going to be a part of your life for a longer time. And I can only wish you the best of luck, because I can actually foresee you being one of those pivotal people who changes the face of fashion in terms of representation. You know, what is considered desirable, the definition is constantly evolving and changing. And it is time that, you know, people like you bring it to the forefront that everybody is desirable, and, you know, basically try and make everybody on this earth feel acknowledged and sexy, more, you know, lack of better words. So go you, and I think I will be rooting for your success ever so in this industry.
Thank
Okay.
you. Because yeah, I mean, everything that you just said is so true. Like the thing that I love about modeling is that it's a form of art itself, and I call my body a human canvas. So when I'm backstage and they're getting my outfits ready or whatever it is, and they ask like, do you want this or that, or what do you think about this? And I said like, my body is your human canvas. Use it as you will. And then I bring my own energy. I bring my own walk, and I turn it into my own. And what I love about that is that it shows that bodies inherently are not gendered. I can wear masculine clothes. I can wear feminine clothes. I can wear androgynous clothes. I could wear a mix, whatever it is. It's not going to change my gender identity. It's just showing that our bodies are all different and beautiful in those differences.
That is actually so beautiful words, that I can wear whatever I want to wear, but that doesn't imply or change how I identify myself. And that is actually very wise for you to lace it beautifully. Moving on, now that we know that you're excelling at like 90,000 things, you have 90,001 stuff that I want to talk about is your killer merch line that I briefly mentioned before. But the good part about your merch line is that it's also supporting some great causes that you stand for. And one of those causes that I eventually want you to break into are the 4 urgent need programs that you're currently leading, which is very pivotal in the trans community, because if we don't have advocates like you in the LGBTQ space, then things might not be as seamless for so many lucky ones that you decide to raise funds for. So tell us more about your merch line and who are you supporting via the profits?
Of course. So my merch line is called Live Fluid Apparel because my motto of living is that identity is fluid, gender is fluid. All of our experiences do not, I'm going to rephrase that. All of our experiences make us the unique people that we are, but we don't need to stay in a stagnant space. So this idea of the fluidity of our lived experiences, of identity, of relationships, whatever it may be, is how I chose the name for my apparel brand. And I started Live Fluid Apparel to help raise money for my own top surgery, because when I was pursuing my top surgery, I had to pay out of pocket. And in order to have enough funds, I needed to raise the money. So I came up with Live Fluid Apparel, and we sold beanies like the one I'm wearing now. And we also sell baseball caps that have different queer symbols or different icons on them as a way to say we are living proudly as queer people. And so folks that purchase my merch, before, when I didn't have top surgery, 100% of the proceeds went to my top surgery. And now that I've had top surgery, I have a community recipient, and I have a different community recipient every few months or so, depending on when I change the lines. And so 15% of the profits from all of the sales of Live Fluid Apparel go to supporting our community recipient, who currently is raising money for his top surgery.
That is so great. That is so great. Basically, from imply that all are one is all. And
another little fun fact is that although we currently only have our beanies and baseball caps on our website, I am collaborating with other queer and trans artists to create t-shirts and sweatshirts that are trans affirmations and are for trans allies to wear. So that will also be coming out soon.
Marco. I mean, I could see that. I mean, I would love to wear, mix, Lex Horwitz designs. I could see you at your own line, Fashion Week. I'm putting it out in the universe. You and Marco. Also,
I'm all in.
Yeah. So let's now talk about your 4 urgent need programs that you're leading. What are those?
Yeah, so a big part of my advocacy is that, so I do facilitations, workshops, and public speaking, and a lot of that you can actually find on my website, on my YouTube, on my Instagram. But another part that I work on every day are my urgent need programs. And so when I say urgent need, that pretty much means that these programs are free for folks who have limited or no financial and social support as the queer trans people that they are. Mm-hmm. Another part of why it's urgent need is that I make sure that folks who, like I just said, don't have sufficient financial or social support, but also I prioritize folks who have experienced homelessness, who are living with disabilities, who are people of color, who are refugees. And so I look into account at all the ways that our identities are intersectional, right? Like we're not just queer people, we're not just like Jewish people or whatever it may be. And so I work to make sure that I call them urgent need, because for the folks that need these services the most, the folks that are typically denied government services or whatever it may be because of their multiple intersectional identities, I have all my resources available for free for folks. And so on top of that, and even if it's folks that maybe they have the financial ability to purchase a binder or purchase a packer, those are different items that folks may choose to feel affirmed in their bodies, I still provide services for all who come to me saying like, I want support or I need help. And the 4 different programs that I currently have are a starter binder program, a starter packer program, a gender affirming clothing program, and a community mentoring program. And so all of these programs are available on my website for people to check out, to see if they're eligible, what they mean. And the moral of the story is that I know that I'm coming from a place of privilege. I have love and support from my family. I do not have to worry about losing my family because of my identity and being my authentic self. And that is a privilege, because so many trans folks, so many queer folks do not have that privilege. I also have the privilege of, yes, I'm Jewish and I have white skin, so I benefit from white privilege. And so right. I'm using all of the avenues that are providing me with a greater safety and ability to be public and to be loud and to really mess things up for people, because I have these privileges. So I always just like to note that, like, I'm coming from a place of privilege, which is why I'm even able to have this conversation with you, because I'm not worried about losing my safety or my family. Right. And so through my urgent need programs, I use this privilege of mine to say, hey, like, if you are struggling, if you need a friend, if you have questions about transitioning, or you want to know more knowledge, whatever it may be, whether you're queer yourself or not, cis or trans, whatever it may be, like, I am a resource that is available and willing to have dialogue with you. Whether you agree with me, that's great. If you disagree with me, that's even better. I want to have a conversation with people, because the way that we're going to change the world is through having these open dialogues. Right.
That is so rightfully laced, because, and I'm glad that you realize the fact of the privileges that, you have. Sometimes you often see the glass half full, or half empty, but you're seeing the glass half full, and you're trying to make the most of it, especially for people who are coming from ethnicities and cultures where coming out could also be deemed as, lethal for their life and their existence. Yeah. So you're assisting those folks to basically do a seamless, transition and foray into their new lives, and that is definitely commendable. How can people help you with this particular programs? Is there a place where we can potentially donate or something?
Yes, there is, and I would be so grateful for any donations. So on my website is www.lexhorwitz.com. And there is actually on my homepage a donate section. And so whether you have materials that you can donate, for instance, if you are a trans person who no longer needs a binder that you have, or you have a packer that is unused, I take material donations as long as it's either new or gently used, and then especially monetary donations. So you can check out my website, you can donate through there. I also have a little link tree in my Instagram bio that shows different ways that you can support my work, whether through PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, whatever it may be, because all of the programs that I run come straight out of my pocket. So to be able to package all of the materials, to send them out, because all of my programs, I work with people from all over the world. Just today, I was talking with someone in Malaysia, and yesterday I had a community chat with someone in Wales. And so I'm sending packages all around the world, and it's not cheap. And so to be able to continue to sustain these programs, right, to be able to provide these life-saving services to people who need our support the most. If you are able to donate or to share my work, much appreciated.
Wow. I mean, definitely, I will urge everybody, including myself, we will be doing our part at least because, I mean, that's what we are here for. If we cannot provide the brick and mortar or all hands-on support to these organizations, the minimum we can do is donate a part of our daily expenditures. It might cause, it might be a loss of one Starbucks coffee to you, but it might mean so much to somebody else. So
it could literally save someone's life
by that little part of donation. So we will definitely be doing our part, Lex. I will be including all of this information in the description of this video. So go check it out. I will also be including the links for you guys to have a speedy transfer. But in other words, you will also have Lex's Instagram handle, and that has, believe me, all the information greatly listed. They are just so precise with their OCD, I'm going to use that word, links.
It's true.
That is giving me so much issues. I'm like, oh my God, I need something similar now. But that is definitely helpful. It's so neat. You'll be able to self-navigate around it. And yeah, I mean, this was so beautiful. I am, it's really rare that I'm in loss of words, but you are doing so much for not only the community, but for our society. And you are, as I said initially in the message with you, that I am interested to deal and prosper the words out for people who are path breaking and who have done something off the beaten path. And you can be more deserving of that title. And I only wish you the best in all of your efforts, in your merch line, in your modeling, in your degrees, in your masters. And I can't wait to have a 2.0 of this interview where you are like 5 years, like we discussed before, like we both are millionaires in our G-Wagon, trying to help the world, but at the same time, just living the best life. We need it. We need to just be happy. You deserve it, and you deserve it. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
Any other parting words to our upcoming little youth who might be suffering through similar set of emotions in their teens? Anything that you would want to say? I know.
Yeah. What were you saying?
I was like, if you have something to say, I know I have that. Just keep at it. You have an example like Lex right in front of you that it gets better. It gets so much more easier, and you will eventually get to a point where you'll not only be comfortable in your own life, but you'll get powerful enough that you'll be able to support others. Your turn, Lex. Go for it.
My turn. Well, that was a beautiful message. Let me think. My message would be that this is actually a message to little Lex that I think could help other folks who are in similar situations, is that even though you felt invisible or at times hyper visible as someone who you weren't, or you never thought that you would be able to look into the mirror and actually see yourself staring back at you, you're not only there now, but you're a model. You're an actual professional model who is working to redefine what beauty is and to expand our notions of authenticity and euphoria. And if you could do it, so can everyone else. Because all that matters is that we love ourselves, we take care of ourselves, that we are our own best friend, and that through time, maybe suffering, but you can come up on top and you will be able to see yourself in the mirror one day.
Beautiful words. We are our own best friends. I can't relate to more than this. Take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, be nice to yourself, and be persistent. It gets better, and it gets not only better, but you'll probably be killing it in a few years. So hang in there, little one. Thank you so much, Lex, for letting me interview you. It was such a pleasure having a conversation with you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a pleasure. And thank you for providing the space for me to share my story and share my voice, and a place for people to see my resources and to know that they aren't alone. Because as a mental health advocate, that's a lot of what we're up against, right? Like, we aren't alone. Like, we have community, and you can find someone like me or like you to show, hey, we made it. You just have to hang in there a little bit longer.
Oh, yes. You just have to hang in there, and there is love and support. All you have to do is look towards the different directions, and you'll probably find a helping hand. Maybe it's Lex's and his programs. All right. Yes. Thank you, Lex. Thank you for this interview.
Thank you so much. Stay safe.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.